Today, the southern Appalachian Mountains attract tourists from all over the United States, but it wasn't always this way. The tourism industry took off in the 1960s due to expanding technology and infrastructure. People were able to see the wealth of diverse activities the mountains offered, making the region the perfect getaway for the whole family. Activities included enjoying the natural beauty of the mountains, as represented in the Great Smoky Mountains and other natural parks. Amusement parks became more and more advertised, turning parts of history such as the Tweetsie Railroad into a source of entertainment for children and families. Skiing turned small towns into resorts, bringing both income and prestige to the towns which were unnoticeable before. The Biltmore estate went from a struggling model farm to the most glamorous house in America in the mid-60s due to the influx of tourism. The 1960s brought Interstate S40 and 26, two major roadways for Easterners to make their way to the mountains with ease. Nostalgia for simple times combined with the desire to see the nature that so quickly dissolved under the lights of eastern cities attracted travelers. The variety of attractions for outsiders allowed the people of Appalachia to glorify their natural surroundings as a means of economic advancement.
The Appalachian Mountains was taken up by the National Park Service in the state of North Carolina. Advertisements took two major routes, emphasizing either fun or nature. The first set of advertisements used bright colors and animated figures. The job of such advertisements was to appeal to families because by the early 60s, more families had disposable income to travel. Advertisements also included photographs, such as this advertisement for Grandfather Mountain. It features characters in full costume that could be found in the parks. Bright characters and recognizable stereotypes appeal to the masses, giving an image of the Wild West. American hero Daniel Boone stands alongside a Tweetsie Railroad can-can dancer and the Tin Man from Wizard of Oz. Whereas these characters may not seem to fit together, they project whimsy and history in front of the beautiful greenery of the mountains.
Another form of promotion relied on the beauty of the surroundings. Hills and snow provide a perfect backdrop for skiing. Advertisements for skiing are less about whimsy, instead relying on woods and acres of greenery.
Travel business wasn't really important at all, and my father took over the travel business when it was losing about $250,000 a year in the 60s, and he recently told me that he thought he'd work his whole career just to get that to break even.
Tourism affected the economy. Land of Oz at Beech Mountain employed about 150 young people every summer. The Historical Association of Big Cove, NC, employed about 250 Cherokee Indians every summer for about 4.5 months to perform in the drama or to work in the model village, the museum, or the information booth. Summer employment was fine for teens who had to go to school for the rest of the year, but it had mixed outcomes for the Cherokee Indians. It gave the Cherokees an additional source of income and experience with wage work, but the income was not enough to support their families through the winter and in the summers took away valuable workers from helping on their family farms. Employment provided by tourism was temporary. For example, the Biltmore estate, while incredibly financially successful today, still has to adjust to the schedules of visitors. Visitors come mostly on weekends, except for in the summer months when weekdays are busier. Christmas is also an exceptionally busy time of year. Ski resorts fill up during the winter rather than summer months and must hire accordingly. Outdoor amusement parks are most successful when the weather is warm. So what does this mean for employees? Although employment is available, it is never concrete due to the changes in consumer demand.
Learning experience. I mean, we grew up on a big dairy farm, and now we're a travel attraction where, where per capita spending is double the ticket price now.
What amusement parks, ski lodges, and natural surroundings failed to do is give a true image of what Appalachia is like. Tweetsie Railroad is centered around a Wild West theme, and while it can be appealing to audiences, it gives an inaccurate depiction of western North Carolina. Instead of actually showing the people who live there and emphasizing their culture, a cowboys and Indians theme overwhelms the park. The park is trapped in time. Here they find crystallized many of the folkways and relics of the frontier life which elsewhere vanished when the last acre of the far west had been won. Howard Washington Odom, folder 2371. The poverty in the area is completely whitewashed. Natural beauty attracted tourists. Vegetation and beautiful landscapes drew people to the mountain region. But because the focus was on the land and not the people, deeper issues were washed over. Nobody wanted to go on a vacation to a poverty-stricken region, so instead of selling an image of human struggle, tourism sold a natural oasis free of worries of the world. If one simply looks at the beauty of the region, the people are ultimately forgotten and disregarded. One of the best-known attractions of Appalachia is the Biltmore Estate. The Biltmore was originally started as a model farm meant to demonstrate self-reliability. George Vanderbilt started construction on the massive estate in 1889 as an attempt to create America's premier home, complete with an idealized environmental setting. After 6 years, the home was finally opened to family and friends. It wasn't until 1930 that the Biltmore was opened to tourists in hopes to increase tourism and income during the Depression. During World War II, the Biltmore merely served as a storage for art. In 1960, William A.V. Cecil returned to the Biltmore to increase tourism, and a decade later planted the first vines for the winery. William Cecil Jr., the current CEO of the Biltmore Company, recalls his childhood in the early 60s when his father believed he would never break even with the Biltmore. By the mid-60s, he had. Because of interstates, it was no longer a trek to get Easterners to come to Asheville. The Biltmore quickly developed into a huge business or an image product.
Business, and we really started looking at ourselves as an entertainment product and not as a historic house. And that was a
Tweetsie Railroad began operation as a railroad in 1881, but it was not until the 60s and 70s that the park became part of the tourism industry. But in the 60s, amusement rides for children showed up, and the magical aura began to form. By the later half of the 60s into the 70s, the Wild West idea took over. Celebrities from Hollywood films, generally the Wild West genre, visited the park. The originally historic train soon developed into a Western theme park, and as time went on, new rides and entertainment filled the park. Beech Mountain was a famed ski resort by the 1970s. Wilsona Burke remarked, "Beech Mountain became a very famous ski resort. It was not a ski resort when I was there. I remember a few years after I was there, people talked about going to Beech Mountain. I went, 'What's at Beech Mountain?' There's nothing but a little school up there on the side of the mountain." It was an all-seasons resort, not to mention the South's largest. Beech Mountain had the world's largest snowmaking operation. Skiing wasn't the only attraction for tourists looking to vacation at Beech Mountain. There was ice skating, an Italian gondola system, an 18-hole golf course, a heated pool, tennis courts, horseback riding, and finally hiking. The plethora of attractions made it an ideal getaway for families. Advertisements announced that Beech Mountain had the highest slopes on this side of the Mississippi and bragged that the mountain could hold 9,000 skiers an hour. Beech Mountain also provided a back-in-time experience with the Bavarian village. Grandfather Mountain is the epitome of mountainous beauty. Visitors come from all over to hike and enjoy the natural life. Attractions feature the mountain's biota, dramatic vistas, and geological formations. Hugh Morton, an advocate of tourism and environmental activism, was the owner of Grandfather Mountain for the latter part of the 20th century. A professional photographer, he documented the beauty of the region in thousands of photographs. Hotels along rivers dating to the 1880s began the commercialization of the region, as well as farming families coming to use the area for their livestock. Grandfather Mountain likely captures the essence of Appalachia and most accurately of all of the tourists in the region. Although tourism provides a too-perfect image of Appalachia that ignores less desirable traits, tourism did provide a much-needed economic boost to the region.
Let the rain drive right on, let the waves sweep along, 'cause I got them deep river blues.